My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Well, this is a very special moment because I'm standing right now in Acadia National Park, way up in the northern parts of Maine, almost in Canada. And it's a beautiful place. I'm standing in the middle of a spruce forest, and you could practically hear a pin drop. You may hear behind me the chirp of birds. It's a beautiful place. I'm surrounded by God's grandeur. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. This is how Gerard Manley Hopkins describes nature. We can pray with nature. It's a wonderful thing to do. And perhaps this summer, we can take advantage of better weather to get out and to drink in the beauty of creation. This is a wonderful way for us to pray. And I'm here walking through the woods, and I see a lot of trees, a lot of growth, a lot of plants, and also a lot of insects. In fact, I had to put on insect repellent to protect myself from mosquitoes and other bugs. And today's gospel talks about certain insects that can be problematic. You, Lord, refer to moths and to wormwoods. And these are insects which, of course, give glory to God, just like everything that he creates. But they can also cause problems, and they can kind of get into the things that we use and that we know, and wreak havoc, as it were. We read in today's gospel. Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not store up treasures for yourselves on earth, where moths and woodworms destroy them, and thieves can break in and steal. But store up treasures for yourselves in heaven, where neither moth nor woodworms destroy them, and thieves cannot break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Moths and woodworms, these insects that, if we're not careful, can get in and destroy, just like thieves who break in and steal. Let's think a bit about this imagery that you, Jesus, present to us. I remember when I was a child growing up, I distinctly remember the pungent smell of mothballs, those mothballs that my mother would use, putting them in the closets around our house to repel the presence of moths. I also remember we had a summer home where there was a closet made of pine wood. We called it the gerbil closet because it smelled like those wood chips that are used in gerbil cages. And that pine wood, again, is meant to repel moths. And as a kid, I always wondered, well, what's the big deal? You know, what's the problem with a harmless moth? You know, you can swat them away, you can kill them so easily. Until, as an adult, I lost a sweater to a moth. Right, the moth was in it got into one of my sweaters and ate all these holes in it. Right, unbeknownst to me, silently, the moth was working away and wreaking havoc on my clothing, leaving it filled with holes. What about wormwoods? I remember living in Rome in a house that had a lot of old furniture. And so one of the chores for us in the house was called wormwood duty, right? Where two people would mask up and use these like little guns that were filled with poison, and they would go and meticulously examine each piece of furniture that was made of wood and identify those little holes where the wormwoods had gotten in, and they would squirt those holes and fill them with poison to kill off the wormwoods, and then they would seal off the holes to keep them from invading the wood again. Because if not, that wood, little by little, gets destroyed from the inside. The wormwoods burrow themselves into the wood and start creating these pathways, and little by little, they break up the furniture, destroying it from within. Moths, wormwoods, their work is small, it's tiny. They're tiny little things. They work silently and gradually, but over time, they can destroy what they're eating, right? What they're consuming. And Jesus, you use this imagery to speak of the heart. And we know that this is the case, that if we're not careful, we can foster certain desires or certain thoughts in our heart that can eat us up on the inside. We can foster wormwoods who eat away at us little by little. When our heart should be whole, it should be integral, it should be entirely given over to God. In fact, we want our heart to be stored up for heaven. We want our treasures to be above where God is, not attached to the things here below that can create all sorts of wormwoods or moths in our heart. Do not store up treasures for yourselves on earth, where moths and woodworms destroy them. Thieves can break in and steal. Isn't it true that sometimes we give our heart away to the wrong things? We latch on to certain attachments that we think are going to give us pleasure, we think are going to fulfill us, but then they leave us empty inside. They leave us feeling worse than before. Well, that's a little bit like the action of the wormwood in the wood, right? It slowly, gradually carves out all these holes, or the moth that eats up the cloth, leaving it with holes. Our heart can also be left like in a vacuum when we give it away to loves with a lowercase l. They don't satiate. And Augustine reminds us so often, right? We go back to that phrase from Confessions often in our prayer, where St. Augustine says, the heart is restless. We could say the heart is empty, the heart is aching until it rests in God, right? Only God can fill the heart and make it whole. And so this is a good time for us to pray for the virtue of purity, right? The whole idea of the virtue of purity, of chastity, is to keep our heart whole, to keep it integral. When there are all sorts of things that can beckon the heart and pull it in all sorts of different directions and leave it empty. And this is the experience we have of lust, the experience we have of impurity, right? It leaves us empty inside, filled with holes. But Lord, you want us wholly for yourself. You want us given completely over to you, and that all of the other loves of our life, because we have many loves, right? Many people listening to this 10 minutes with Jesus have spouses, they have children, they have parents. Right? These are authentic loves that we give ourselves to, that we truly love with all of our heart, but always passing through the heart of Christ. Never letting any of our loves become possessive, to become detrimental to our relationship with God. Because if that were to become the case, then those loves would be like moths, like wormwoods that get in and destroy. I see this beauty all around me here in these woods, and I move to raise my heart to God, just like we say in the Mass, sursum corda, lift up your hearts. Right? Let us lift up our hearts and look upward to the heavens, to place our heart on higher things. Even when there are mosquitoes and ticks and moths and wormwoods all around us, we don't let them pull us down. We don't let them distract us from what is essential. We can ask Our Lady, Mother Mary, who is the Queen of Purity, right? She who we just celebrated the other day, her Immaculate Heart, right? Her heart was full. There were no holes there. There were no wormwoods. Her heart was completely centered on her Son. We ask her for that same purity. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.